Strat-O-Matic Excelled Carryover League. Brought to you by the Shrimp Troller. 1972 to 1975.
NL Divisional, Cubs at Reds. Welcome back, baseball fans, to the 1972-75 Carryover League. We are back in the National League with a division series between the Cubs and the Reds. Let's go look at the postseason so far. Start with that. American League is set with the top two teams, Oakland and the White Sox, taking care of the Rangers and Tigers respectively, meeting in the League Championship Series. The White Sox 11 over 500, Oakland 17 over 500. They are the two best teams, and so it's fitting in the American League. National League, we've had one upset, the Braves beating the Giants 4-2, but you have to remember the Braves were a #1 seed a year ago that got bounced in the first round, and this has been sort of the vengeance tour. And even though they struggled, were below 500 at the All-Star break, they have been the hottest team in the National League since. And the Braves, just at 6 over 500 after clawing their way back, are in the League Championship Series against either the Cubs or the Reds. And what has turned out to be a very competitive National League altogether. No one has really run away with anything. Matter of fact, the Giants finished 4 games over 500. Actually, 8 games over 500, my bad. This Giant team, not that one. That was last year. This is this year. And the Braves are 6 over. Cubs start the series 10 over, excuse me. But that was because they had beat Las Vegas 5 out of 8 times, and the Reds 7 over. So, kind of an up for grabs National League. Reds don't want to hear that, though. They don't want to hear it's up for grabs because they're the big red machine. So let's take a look at what has happened in Game 1. Probably should mention, I'll do that now too. I'm going to go back for a moment, back into time, to the reason why the Cubs found themselves as a wild card and Cincinnati found themselves with a bye. And it came down to Game 127, many, many months ago, when the teams played their 7-game series that went the full 7 games, and the Reds won that game 6-1. Jack Billingham threw a complete game, 4 hits, 1 run allowed, beating Fergie Jenkins, who gave up 6 runs in 9 innings. That's how the Reds got the tiebreaker against the Cubs. That's how the Reds finished a half game better than the Cubs. That's how the Reds ended up with the #2 seed, and the Cubs ended up with the #5 seed. Came all the way back to this being the reason why. So I wanted to throw that out there at you as we now proceed to look at this series. Here is now Game 1 of your divisional series. Fergie Jenkins, the ace of the Cubs, versus Don Gullett. Mission 1 for Fergie Jenkins is probably to go deep into the game as to not use the weak bullpen the Cubs have. That's the weakest part of either team's, the Cub bullpen. And the Reds could care less because the Reds are cooking to start the series. Joe Morgan, solo shot to start the thing off. 3rd inning, Joe Morgan doubles, scores on a Pete Rose single. Oh boy. Morgan and Rose have been pretty underwhelming thus far in 2024. If those guys get hot, like they are known to, and should have been, we do have a team running away with the National League. Bottom of the 3rd. You get a walk, you get a Concepcion single, and Cesar Geronimo with a 3-run homer? Can't do that, Fergie. Can't let that happen, along with everything else the Big Red Machine does. 5th inning, a walk, a 2-run homer by Tony Perez, RBI single for Joe Morgan, who is 4 for 4 by the 5th inning. And you get the idea, folks. Fergie could only get through 7 innings of this mess. The Reds walk away with Game 1, 8-1. Gullit goes 8, 3 hits, 1 run allowed, a garbage run in the 8th inning. 8-1 victory for the Reds. The Cubs, as I've said in previous broadcasts, their net run differential is bad. It's negative. So the mere fact they even have a winning record and are in the playoffs is dubious. Though, when they lose, they get blown out. When they win, it's usually by a run or two. Let's get to Game 2 in Cincinnati. Do the Cubs have an answer in Riverfront Stadium? Bird Hooton versus Gary Nolan. And the answer is heck no. The Cubs are in the way of the Big Red Machine. The Big Red Machine, the engine's been started, it's plowing down the road, and it's crunching up whatever is in its path. Oh, it's the Cubs? Okay. Morgan singles, steals a base, Rose knocks him in. You get the idea early. Bench doubles. Foster's in this game today. He's on the bench. He's like the 10th Red. Unbelievable. 3 runs in the first, 4 in the third. You get an error by Kessinger in there. That doesn't help. An error by Tim Hosley doesn't help. It's 7-0. In the 5th inning, single, double. And it's ugly for Bert Hooton. Bert survived 6 innings to help the bullpen from being overworked this early in a best-of-7 series by giving up 15 hits and 10 runs. 6 are earned. The Reds just pour it on. The Cubs make it interesting in the 9th with some garbage scoring. Turn a 12-3 game into a 12-6 game. Cincinnati Reds 12, the Cubs 6. We're looking at what is turning out to be the reality of the era in Major League Baseball. The Reds are the Big Red Machine, and the Cubs are probably a pretender. So, what happens when we go to Wrigley Field for Game 3? Do the Cubs show up in Game 3 in Wrigley Field? Game number 3. Final score, Cubs 15, Reds 3. Yes, the Chicago Cubs said, no, we've got to do something. We have got to just put it together today. We can't go down 0-3 and be humbled. We know the Reds are great, but in this particular year, they haven't been running away with the National League. Let's put it together. Oh, by the way, Jack Billingham is on the mound. You remember Jack. He was the guy who, through a complete game, gave up 1 run against them. And the reason why the Cubs didn't win this division? There was a big meeting about that, and they figured out how to dispatch Jack Billingham. And that is to take some pitches. A hit, a walk, single, double. You get a walk, homer, single, double, walk, homer here. Billingham is knocked out by the 4th inning as to not overwork his bullpen. When a pitcher gets broken, I usually make him pitch through the 4th inning because I don't have depth in our 8-man pitching staffs. And here's the line. Jack Billingham, 3 2/3, 12 hits, 13 earned runs, 5 walks, and 2 strikeouts. Well, he may have been having a nice year. No more. He's not having a good year at all as Jack Billingham. He's getting lit up with an ERA above 6, which gave Doug Rowell enough room to throw 5 1/3 innings as a lefty. The Reds are better against righties than lefties. 5 1/3, 7 hits, 3 runs allowed. The Cubs win 15-3. Do the Reds look at this as a gentleman's sweep, giving the Cubs 1 win and winning the rest? Well, first of all, you need to win the first 3 games to do that, so the answer is no. And in Game 4, the Cubs want to even the series. Let's take a look now at a Game 4 in Wrigley Field. Interesting matchup. Fred Norman for the Reds, Rick Russell for the Cubs. Same templates. The 5 template, or the 5-4 template, we'll call it. And interestingly, they're both weak against lefties, even though Norman is a lefty. Russell, notoriously weak against lefties throughout his career. Norman's better against righties. Fun game. Finally, after 3 boring blowouts where nothing was competitive, we get a heck of a baseball game. In the first, Joe Morgan reaches on an error by Glenn Beckert. Can't do that, Glenn. Steals a base, of course. With 2 outs, you got an MVP, Johnny Bench, with an RBI double, 72 and 70 MVP. 1-0. Bottom of the first, Jim Hickman was an all-star a year ago for the Cubs with that 72 card. Homers were tied. Then in the third, it's Billy Williams, 2-run homer for the Cubs. And it's 3-1. In the 6th inning, this is a big moment here. The Reds get a Perez single. Don Mincher walks. You have 2 on, 2 outs. And the lefty, Bobby Tolan, you could have brought in a reliever, but not with this Cub bullpen. You got to let Russell pitch to the lefty. And like I said, he's not good against them. Doesn't matter. Tolan gets the hit off his card. It is a 2-out, 2-run single. We have a tie game. Then in the 7th inning, after 2 strikeouts, Joe Morgan walks, steals a base. Pete Rose is up. You could have intentionally walked him and pitched to Perez. But you're also thinking, Pete Rose is a singles hitter anyway. And you have the 2 righties, Perez and Bench, you could do more damage. So it's about damage control, not bloop single control. But guess what? Pete Rose, homer on his own card, the 1973 National League MVP. We got an MVP in Bench. We got an MVP in Pete Rose. Billy Williams hits a home run. I think he was an MVP, or probably should have been, or pretty close. Anyway, it's a 5-3 game because Pete Rose hits a homer instead of a single in this situation. Then is some good relief work by both clubs. In the bottom of the 7th, Fred Norman gives up a single and a walk. He's gone as to not get a loss, and it's Pedro Bourbon facing Billy Williams. Pedro's good against lefties, and Billy Williams pops out, and then Ron Santo hits into a double play. Then in the top of the 8th, good relief work by Don Hood, 3 up and 3 down. Then you have the bottom of the 8th, 3 up and 3 down for Bourbon. Then in the 9th, Burris comes in. A walk, a caught stealing. That is Bobby Tolan getting gunned down by Randy Hundley. Comes down to the bottom of the 9th. It's Clay Carroll, asked to close this thing out with a 2-run lead. Beckert's lifted for pinch hitter Madlock, who grounds out. But then Unser singles. Jose Cardinal strikes out. With 2 outs, Jim Hickman hits a ground ball to first baseman Tony Perez, who boots it. He boots the ground ball that would have ended the game. 2 on, 2 outs, and you got Billy Williams versus Clay Carroll. Or do you? Or do you? Because Sparky Anderson makes a stunning move. He pulls his closer because he has the Billy Williams pitcher for the Reds. His name's Denny Riddleberger. He was an off-season acquisition from the Rangers, a lefty specialist with no hits on his card, just some walks, to pitch to the most devastating left-handed batters in the National League, such as Billy Williams, because the Cubs are never going to pinch hit for Billy Williams, nor should they. And Denny Riddleberger, it's a 50-50 chance, roll on your card or his. They roll on the Riddleberger card and get the strikeout, and the Reds win the game, 5-3. But it was a great baseball game. Unfortunately, it was a huge pendulum swing because instead of the series being tied 2-2, the Big Red Machine has a 3-1 series lead with the divisional format in the 2-2-1-1-1 NBA format. It means Game 5. It's not in Chicago. It's going to be in Cincinnati, with Game 6 in Wrigley if necessary, and Game 7 back in Cincinnati. So that's what we have set up today for you folks. A Game 5 here back in Cincinnati. Let's take a look at the rotations too. We play 5 straight days without a day off, so it's back to Game 1 aces, or guys who can pitch on 3 days rest. Fergie Jenkins versus Don Gullett. In a Game 5 from Cincinnati, let's start with Fergie Jenkins. 25-game winner for the Rangers in 74. The Cubs have kept the card that the Rangers used, extending his stay in Chicago, rightly so. We'll get him to the Rangers soon. Matter of fact, we'll probably keep him in Texas a little longer before he returns back to Chicago. I think he had a stop in Boston in there as well. Anyway, the Reds will send Don Gullett with his 74 card. 17-game winner, 3.04 ERA in 243 innings. Not the, one good game out of 4. And unfortunately, 2 out of 3 of these next games are in Cincinnati, and the Cubs are down 3-1. This is not the series we were hoping we could get out of 2 divisional rivals, but maybe it's closer to reality, right? So leading off, for your Chicago Cubs, they've juggled their lineup against the lefty Gullett, is Carmen Fanzone. 5'11", second X. This is Morgan's a 1E13, makes the play. Ron Santo batting second because of high on base. 6'12", skies to right. And here's Billy Williams. 6'11", pitcher X, Gullett. E6. Good fielding pitcher. Makes the play. All right, Joe Morgan leading off. 37 is ball 4. Boy, Morgan has really arrived in the playoffs, as you can imagine he probably would after a very disappointing regular season that found him hitting in the 210s, 220s, 230s for most of it. But he's getting on base with regularity now. Randy Hundley's catching for the Cubs with a -2 arm, so Morgan will show some patience here. And it will be Pete Rose. 66, he off the Jenkins card. It's 111, single dot dot. We get single dot dot. Runners are on the corners for Tony Perez. 410, center X. This will score a run. Jose Cardinal, not Del Unser, is in center as a 3E8 center fielder. And they get a fly ball 8. It doesn't score the run. Must have been too shallow. Most of the times on a 3, you'll get a fly ball B or even a hit. But it doesn't this time. Big break for the Cubs. Now you got bench. Here's the pitch to Johnny. 1-6 is ball 4. Loaded for the lefty Bobby Tolan. This is where the Reds need to do their damage as a lefty. 1-9 they do. Let's take a look at Bob Tolan's card. If you're wondering, there were 2 cards from 1972 added to Cincinnati's World Series win a couple years ago when they played Oakland. We added the 72 Gary Nolan and the 72 Bobby Tolan cards. They're still in use because we've replaced Pete Rose's card, Tony Perez's card, Johnny Bench, and we, of course, added Joe Morgan in a trade. Don Gullett's got a different card. But this is a Tolan card that already has a World Series ring. Eventually, he will have to move on. He has also extended his stay, and he needs to go sooner or later to make room for Ken Griffey and company. Foster is on the bench, for Pete's sakes. George Foster's on the bench, and Ken Griffey's in the minor leagues. But don't tell Bobby Tolan that, because he keeps having winning moments with this card. A 283 card and 650 plate appearances, plus a double-A stealer and great defense. 1-9, triple, 1-3 is a single dot dot. Runners on the corners, 1 out. You're holding Tolan, but you're going to play back for double play. And it's Dennis Menke, acquired with Joe Morgan in the trade with Houston. 56, that's a Fergie Jenkins strikeout. That's a big K. And number 7 hitter, free agent Don Mincher. 3-2, let's take a look at this card. Don Mincher. It's not even fair, folks, that the Reds get a designated hitter in an era where, of course, the National League didn't have one. So they went out into the American League. Funny part about this, he was an Oakland A in 1972. As you recall, the Oakland A's beat the Cincinnati Reds in the 1972 World Series. And in this replay, if you're trying to get the Dynasty A's to not be a dynasty, you need to take the players away from them. We've seen this throughout the carryover league if you've been following. We've seen Mike Epstein and Paul Lindblad and Bill North, Vida Blue, Don Mincher. A lot of the Oakland A dynasty players aren't on the Dynasty A's. And in this particular moment, No bigger one for Don Mincher, a 216 hitter in 300 plate appearances, but he hits homers. 3-2, 3-run homer. And oh my goodness, Fergie Jenkins, what have you done to the Cubs? Here in the first inning, have you already played your team out of it? My goodness, it's 5-0. And it's Dave Concepcion. 45, flies to left. It's going to be up to Don Gullett. I mean, all you have to do is play 7 innings, turn it over to the bullpen, and you go to the League Championship Series. Doesn't matter if it's the Cubs or who you're playing. So here we go. Top of the second inning, it's Jim Hickman. 2-12, flies to left. Andre Thornton 1-2. Flies to left, B plus an injury. They lose a first baseman. Thornton, the rookie of 75, promising young player, is injured. Another devastating blow to the Cubs. So they'll put fan zone. Actually, they'll put Jim Hickman at first base at the bottom of the inning, and they'll put Del Unser in the center field. They'll move Cardinal over to right field where Hickman was playing. Oh, my goodness, folks. Here's Jose Cardinal. 2-11, pops to third. Things are going Cincinnati's way. At home, they've been unstoppable, and they are again. After, 8-0 and 11-1 victories, they're up 5-0 in the second. It's Cesar Geronimo. 3-6 is a K. Joe Morgan. 34, roll the second. Pete Rose, 3-10, singles. Tony Perez, 1-8 is a K. Top of the third. Don Kessinger, 58 is a K. Glenn Beckert, 3-10, third. And Randy Hundley, 1-9, a grounder to short. 9 up and down for Gullett, and the Cubs, you can tell, they're shell-shocked. They, a disappointing loss at the end of Game 4, and it carries over today into Game 5. Johnny Bench leads off in the bottom of the third. 55, short X. Kessinger, 2E30. Makes the play. Remember what I said, folks. When the Cubs lose, they get blown out. Bobby Tolan. 2-7 is a K. Dennis Mankey, 1-8's a walk. And here is our boy, Don Mincher, to do more damage. 45, Sky's a center. Top of the fourth. The Carmen Fun Zone. 64 off the Gullett card. That's a homer if you have power. Fan Zone has it. And the Cubs are on the board with a solo shot, 5-1. Ron Santo, 55, second X, Joe Morgan. And he quiets the field with a ground out. Billy Williams, 57's a K. And Jim Hickman, 2-12, flies to left. And Gullett smartly dampens the spirits with 3 straight outs. Does not open the door for a Cubs rally after the homer. 5-1, bottom of the fourth, it's Concepcion. 2-7 is a K. Geronimo, 35, right. And back up top to Joe Morgan. 110 is a base hit. Going to steal with 2 outs. Even against the -2 arm, sure. He's in there on a 6. Very aggressive now. Trying to put the Cubs away. Runner at second, 2 outs for Pete Rose. 1-8 for Rose. Let's take a look at the 1973 MVP. You want to pitch to him? You want to pitch to Perez, Bench, Tolan? You just can't pick and choose who you pitch to. And so, yeah, you'll pitch to a singles hitter who got the MVP, which is what Rose is considered in 73, with a 338 average. He does have 36 doubles and 8 triples, though. So he does have extra base hits. You can't really call him a singles hitter. 1-8 here is a base hit to left field. Morgan, of course, will run 17, 18, 19, and he will score. It's 6-1. Tony Perez, 6-12. Sky's the center. We go to the fifth. It'll be Del Unser, the replacement player for the injury. 64, he'll get on versus Gullett. It's homer 1 of 14. Unser doesn't have power, though. It's a single for Del Unser, but he reaches. They need base runners. Cardinal normally was leading off or batting second, but he has a lot more pop against lefties, so they moved him into an RBI slot in the batting order. Here's the pitch to Jose Cardinal. 58, he strikes out. Don Kessinger. 69, he reaches on a walk. Got to get these guys out if you're gullet here, bottom players. Glenn Beckert. 55 for Beckert is second X. This is Mr. Morgan. This is how they kill you. They can do it with defense, batting average, walks, homers, anything. They got it all. The Reds do. They have the answers. As the Big Red Machine, that is a 4-6-3 double play turned by Hall of Famer Joe Morgan. Oh boy, folks, it's 6-1. Bottom of the fifth. Let's pause a moment for station identification.
This is the Shrimp Trawler video channel.
Este es el canal de videos de camaroneros.
Now, you're just not going to pull Fergie, Hall of Famer himself, Jenkins, just because it's a 6-1 game. I know he struggled, but these runs have all come off the red cards, and there's just not a lot you can do about it. Tolan got the hit off his card, Mincher did, and Rose did. You know, you can't really blame Fergie for that. This is, again, a case of the Cubs simply being in the way of the Reds until something changes. Something has got to change soon. Johnny Bench leads off in the bottom of the fifth. 2-10 grounds the third. Bobby Tolan, 53. Right X. Right field is, it's not Hickman anymore. He moved to first because of the injury. It's Cardinal is in right. Unser's in center. They're both twos. Actually, Cardinal's a 3-8 in right field. But he makes the grab. And with 2 outs, it's Dennis Mankey. 2-6 Ks. Nice inning for Fergie. Into the sixth, it's Randy Hundley. 4-11. Right X. Great defense. Bobby Tolan, 2-4. Makes the catch. Where is their bad defense on the Reds? Tony Perez a 3-13. That's kind of ordinary first baseman, but he always was. Mankey's a 2 at third. There is no bad defense on the Reds. There's nothing. Yeah. I keep forgetting how brilliant the Red defense is in this era. People seem to forget that because of the lumber they brought. Top of the order, Carmen Fanzone. 49, center. Ron Santo, 1-5, a fly ball to left field. Bottom of the sixth, it's Don Mincher. 2-2, just misses another homer, fouls out. Concepcion, 43, left X. Billy Williams, a 3-4. Makes the catch. Geronimo, 69, second X. This is Beckert, 3-22. Makes the play. All right, Gullett, breaking inning. 3 base runners will break him. Cubs have to try and do that and hope that the Red bullpen, what they're noted for, somehow collapses. Can the Reds improve their defense? Like I said, it's perfect. Yeah, well, not perfect as in all ones, but there's no room for improvement there. Top of the seventh, it'll be Billy Williams. 39 is a fly to right. Jim Hickman. 1-8, it's going to be homer. 1-14, double the rest, and it's gone. A Jim Hickman homer, second of the day, but minimal damage as solo shots. Gullett is willing to give those up with a big lead. It's 6-2. Now you got the lefty Del Unser. 110 is a walk. Didn't want to walk the lefty. That was a mistake. Now you got Cardinal, Kessinger, Beckert. Gullett is a guy you'd lean on. Sparky's, though, Sparky Anderson's getting antsy to go to that bullpen. But Gullett, this might be a mistake. He's going to pitch to Jose Cardinal. Here's the pitch. 55, second X. No, it's not a mistake. You hit a ball to Joe Morgan. He's a 1-13, and that's a double play. So if you're wondering, maybe Morgan's defense is what you got out of the trade with Houston to get this Red team back into the World Series. Maybe that's the strategy, even though Tommy Helms was also a 1. Of course, Tommy Helms turns into a 2. Morgan, oddly enough, goes from a 2 to a 1. He actually gets better through 75 and 76. Another bad double play for the Cubs in a comeback attempt because you hit it to Joe Morgan. Jose Cardinal. Terrible break for the Cubs. Off of the gullet card, ending threats in the 5th and 7th innings. That's how you do it. If you want to repeat history, if I'm trying to do what I saw in Major League Baseball in the 70s with a big red machine, it seems to be working in Strat-O-Matic with the Reds. 6-2 game stretch time here in Cincinnati. We've been enjoying the Isley Brothers 1975 LP, the year the Reds won the World Series. The heat is on. And indeed, it is, folks. The heat is on the Cubs by the Reds, doing what it takes to get to the League Championship Series. Fergie Jenkins, it's hard to think about pulling him when he hasn't been responsible for a lot of this. Reds just do what the Reds do. Fergie's on the mound witnessing it. Bottom of the 1st. Bottom of the 7th. Top of the lineup. Joe Morgan. 59. Sky's the center. Pete Rose, 44. Center X. This is Cardinal. No, it's Unser. 2E5 in center field. He makes the catch. And Tony Perez, 35 is a walk. Now you got Johnny Bench. 66 off Fergie is a base hit the right field. Now you get the lefty Tolan. We know he's better against lefties than righties. And I think I just have to let Fergie face him here. 49, and Fergie gets him to pop out. Well, Fergie somehow survives 7 innings, but his team is down 6-2. Into the 8th we go. Gullet is halfway to a point of weakness. 2 batters in the 8th will do it and force a pitching change, but we'll leave Gullet in there to face the bottom of the lineup. Kessinger, Beckert, and Hunley. And here's Don Kessinger. 1-6, pops to second. Glenn Beckert, 3-6, grounds a short, and with 2 outs. Randy Hunley, 2-5, grounds to short. It's Gullet with a nice game. Just the 2 solo shots for the Reds. Now you know why back in that 75 World Series, that famous Game 6 in Fenway, you know, when it went extra innings, when Carlton Fisk hit that big home run, waving it fair past the foul pole in left field, we knew that the Reds were not going to have Don Gullet come in relief of that game. Sparky had 1 pitcher he was not going to use in Game 6, and it was going to be his Game 7 starter, Don Gullet. And you're seeing why. Don Gullet, postseason pitcher here, doing a great job getting the Reds to the League Championship Series. Bottom of the 8th. Do you go to the Cub bullpen? It's a 4-run game. Well, first of all, you got some righties coming up here. Dennis Menke, so he doesn't scare anybody. Dennis Menke will bat. 4-12, center. Don Mincher, 59, center. And with 2 outs, it's Concepcion. 57 is a K. So, for all the warts there, Fergie did everything he could on his own card. And the Reds still got their 6 runs. 6-2 in the 9th, and it is going to be Gullet. As Sparky is put in a situation realizing the home runs were with nobody on board, and he's not in danger of a point of weakness, and it's a 4-run lead. And he's got Riddleberger versus Billy Williams, if you need him. But you have Clay Carroll, Bourbon in the bullpen available. So they're going to start the inning with Gullet, top of the lineup. It will be Carmen Funzone on the bench. You still have Tim Hosley and Madlock. Hosley's not very good against lefties. Madlock's better against righties. But frankly, if it comes down to Del Unsig, you'll probably go to a pinch hitter for him. So it will be Carmen Fanzone leading off, down 4 in the 9th. 4-4. Off Gullet's card is Short X. This is Concepcion, a 2E21. He makes the play. Ron Santo. 64, Ron Santo off the gullet card. It's gone again. Well, 3 solo homers. That's just not going to be good enough. In this game, you're going to need 6 of those. Another solo homer by a Cub. Fan Zone, Santo, and Hickman. It's 6-3. Still, Gullett will stay on the mound. Lefty-lefty, Gullett versus Billy Williams. Here's the pitch to Billy Williams. 48 flies to right field. And with 2 outs, it's Jim Hickman, and Gullett's going to stick around. Here's the pitch to Jim Hickman. 39 is a walk, and we have Del Unser. Lefty-lefty again, but Dell's not nearly as good against lefties as righties. This is a tough decision for the Cubs. If you go to a righty pinch hitter like Madlock, the Cubs are just going to go to Clay Carroll to close it out. But if you get on and extend this game, Gullett's at the point of weakness, and you get the Clay Carroll anyway versus Jose Cardinal. And then you got Kessinger. And if you can extend this game, I'd probably pinch hit Madlock for Kessinger to tie or win the game. So that's the strategy. We're going to let Del Unser bat here against Don Gullett, because at least Unser reaches with walks. So Del Unser actually will bat against the lefty Gullett, hoping that he's weakened to point of weakness here. Here's the pitch to Del Unser. 59 off of Gullett is short X. This is Concepcion, a 2 at short, and that is your ball game. Not a lot you can do in that situation. You rolled off the pitcher's card with 2 outs in the 9th inning. Del Unser grounds out, and the Cubs just fell short, played tough in a game 5, tough breaks early, had some big hits, not enough, and the Reds win the game and win the series and go to the National League Championship Series. The Cincinnati Reds, probably the favorite, is the number 2 seed to go to the World Series. Don Gullett gets a complete game, as does Fergie Jenkins. We'll go right into the post game here. And in a microscope, you can say, well, you give the Cincinnati Reds a designated hitter. My goodness, that's not that is not a good look for the National League, giving the Reds a DH. Because, you know, I mean, what could they have done? Well, in the World Series against Boston, I guess they had a DH. I guess it probably would have been Dan Driesen, I'm guessing. They would have had Driesen and Tony Perez both in the same lineup at the same time. Imagining that. Don Gullett does get the win. Folks, all said and done, of course he's going to stick around in the 9th inning. He only gave up 4 hits, the 3 solo homers and a single to Del Unser. Well, actually, Del Unser actually reached 2 out of 3 times. So he earned the right to bat in the 9th. 3 solo homers allowed, 3 walks, 3 strikeouts, complete game. Fergie Jenkins, what a tough loss. The numbers look bad. 7 hits and 6 runs. What are you going to do when the Bobby Tolan gets a hit on his card and Mincher? You know, just it's a tough loss for Fergie. And it's not like he didn't have those. I mean, you know, Fergie's ERA often got inflated because the Cubs are always getting into high-scoring affairs, and they were always overmatched. So it was hard for Fergie to get, you know, an ERA down into the low 2s, you know, like Seaver or Sutton, you know, Jim Palmer, Catfish Hunter. It's almost impossible for Fergie to get down to that low of an earned run average with the schedule he had and playing in Wrigley Field. And unfortunately, just not enough today against the Reds. 1009 0108 6734 3347 for 733 in a game 5. We'll look at some stats here and do a little bit of scouting for the League Championship Series. Wow. Yeah, the Reds look very impressive. Frankly, they look more impressive now than the Pittsburgh Pirates did a year ago. when the Pirates won the World Series. They were fighting, scratching, and clawing the whole time. The Reds, whew, they were pretty comfortable this series, even against a tough foe who, when they previously met, took them to 7 games. Didn't happen this time. And the Reds end up winning 8 of 12 games against the Cubs this year. So. And the team stats are actually right against each other here. So the Cubs finished their year 28-21. Outstanding. Great year for the Cubs. Outdoing the predictions for them. However, with that great winning record, 28-21, it's a football score, they scored 209 runs, but they gave up 219 runs. Something you would think a losing team would do. They hit 257. That's a little disappointing. And their ERA is 4.01. Oddly enough, it's better than the Pirates and the Reds and the Cardinals' earned run average. So that's a good situation. The Cubs also had home run years by Santo, 11, 30 RBI, 10 homers for Billy Williams. Billy Williams was the all-star for this team. Finishes the season 59 for 196, 301 for Billy Williams. Fergie ends up going 9-7 with 9 complete games. That's what you value the most. The ability to give the bullpen a day off. For all we talk about the Cubs bullpen, they actually finished 5-2 with 11 saves. Burris had an ERA around 4.5, as did Hood. Yeah, the ERA of the bullpen wasn't very good. Doug Rowell was decent. Bert Hooton was pretty good, 38 runs allowed in 108 innings. Let's look at the Reds, though. 26-16. Presently the best record in the National League after how do we describe it? They had an ordinary start, nothing spectacular. They've since got hot since the All-Star break and look like a big red machine type team. Hitting 288, 419 earned run average. If they need Clay Carroll, he's delivered. He's got 8 saves, 1-0, only 4 runs in 18 innings. That's outstanding if they need him. Probably don't need him that much. Gary Nolan's 7-3. Don Gullett is 4-6, so a losing record because Fred Norman's 6-2. Pedro Bourbone's 4-0. Bullpen's 5-1 with 9 saves. So that's Sparky's bullpen. Gullett, the pitcher of tough luck, because he's actually pitched pretty good this year, even though he's 4-6. That might explain why the Reds didn't get the #1 seed and didn't run away with the National League, is that Gullett pitched in a lot of tough games against the ace of the other teams. Bench, 13 home runs, 42 RBIs, the runner-up for the MVP to Willie Stargell. We saw Morgan and Rose start to heat up. But let's look at the numbers and see what it really looks like. Joe Morgan. So Morgan, 42 for 168. That's a 250 average. So yeah, plenty of room still for improvement, even after getting hot. But you got to factor in the walks. He's got 34 walks, so that'll make the on base close to 400. He's walked 34 times, and the Reds have played 42 games. Pete Rose, who had the big homer, probably the most decisive moment in this series was Pete Rose's homer in the top of the 7th of Game 4. Rose, 51 for 167, hitting 305. So good enough for Pete Rose, but not good enough for an MVP. And beyond that, I think the leading hitter on this team, is it Johnny Bench with 56 hits? Johnny Bench is hitting 357, folks. Yeah. Probably disappointed. We've given Johnny Bench multiple MVPs in our league with that 1970 card, and haven't given him one yet. Well, actually, I don't know if we've given him an MVP yet with this 72 card. Probably could have got it this year if it wasn't for Stargell that we gave it to. Stargell's numbers, by the way, they're right here. Yeah, he's 16 homers and 52 RBIs in fewer games than the Reds. So he's got those stats better than Johnny, and he's 51 for 167. Startle's hitting 305, kind of slumped at the end there, but frankly, he's coming off a World Series title, and he had struggled mightily in the last 2 years. So it's almost like after watching Stargell struggle, it was nice to give him an MVP at the expense of Johnny Bench in this comparison. But 26-16 for the Reds, 28-21 for the Cubs. We're going to plug that in as we get closer to this. Again, Cincinnati wins 4-1. None of the series went 7. The Reds are 10 over 500. The Cubs are 28-21 to end their year. So that puts them 7 over 500. In the National League, it will be Cincinnati instead of the Pirates. 10 over 500, and it will be the Braves instead of the Phillies. Same divisions, same scenarios. Wild card team Phillies replaced by wild card team Braves. Division winning Pirates replaced by division winning Reds. And these are indeed the games over 500. After divisional, this is a net 0. So yeah, these are the proper stats. American League has teams with better overall records. Their finalists are 28 games over 500. National League only 16 over 500, but you got to remember how much more competitive the National League is. There's more teams qualified to go to a World Series. American League, Baltimore fell off, Detroit fell off, the Expos haven't arrived yet, Red Sox disappointed, Yankees are nowhere to be found, Kansas City slumped at the end. That explains why the White Sox and Oakland are running away with the top seeds in the American League. National League, Braves had to fight off the Mets team that took advantage of them early in this season. The Phillies, coming off a league championship a year ago. Of course, the Reds, we know, they have to battle the Pirates. And, of course, these Cubs. The Cardinals are a decent team. And you got the Giants out west. So that explains why these one-loss records aren't as good. White Sox, Oakland, Braves, Reds. I can actually even go to the matchups here, as there are going to be some days off for the Cincinnati Reds to juggle their rotation. So they can go, if they want, to Gary Nolan in Game 1. If they want, as he's the best pitcher. We saw that Gullett has a losing record. So I think they're going to go Gary Nolan in 1. And it depends on who you want in Game 4. Probably Billingham. So I'm going to go Gullett in Game 2. Actually, pitch it on 4 days rest. We'll go Fred Norman in Game 3. We'll go to Jack Billingham in Game 4. And then back to Nolan. This is because we want Gary Nolan to pitch as much as possible. He can't pitch on 3 days rest. You can only pitch on 4. So we'll pitch Game 1. And then have 4 days off and come back in Game 5. Gullett in 6. Norman in 7. Which means Jack Billingham would open up a World Series if they get that far. So there you go. American and National League Championship Series are set. Game 1s for each league. The White Sox are going to surprise everybody and send Bart Johnson versus Catfish Hunter. And because they want Wilbur Wood, he's going to get 3 starts anyway, but they want Wilbur Wood to match up against Al Downing. They feel very strong about getting a road win in one of these 2 games, do the White Sox. And the Reds, Gary Nolan versus Phil Niekro, and then we'll have a battle of lefties, Don Gullett and George Stone in Game 2. Cincinnati and Oakland have got to be considered the favorites with their World Series pedigree. But I like the Final 4. The Braves are very strong, and the White Sox are very strong. This is a very competitive Final 4 in the League Championship Series. Too close to call. It's easy to say Reds and Oakland, but you almost have to think one of those 2 teams, White Sox or Braves, might pull the upset if they don't go into a slump. If the White Sox and Braves overachieve in the slightest, they can go to the World Series. So there's that. That's it today. Break up the Cincinnati Reds. They have reassembled, put together the Big Red Machine. They will advance to the League Championship Series. Thanks for checking this out. We'll see you next time.